Hiya Crafters, Amy here with amyswares, and today I'm going to compare some black cardstock as it relates to white heat embossing. I have 4 different brands of black cardstock here. I have My Favorite Things, Simon Says Stamp, Lawn Fawn, as well as Hero Arts, and I'm going to do the same white heat embossing on all 4 examples so that we can see if one works better than the other, or see if a new favorite has emerged from the pack. I have some alabaster white embossing powder, some white Hero Hues pigment ink, and my favorite embossing tool from the Rabbit Hole Designs. Okay, I'm going to pop in with voice here real quick. I cut down a sheet of each so that I have half of it, and I want to do a cursory glance at the colors here. You can see some are richer and deeper. I shouldn't say color because it's black, but you know what I mean. I also wanted to feel them and see if they had kind of a smooth finish or a rough finish. I would say right off the bat that you feel these. I would say that My Favorite Things and the Simon Says Stamp are the roughest, but they're still not rough by any means. They just aren't as smooth. The Lawn Fawn feels really smooth to the touch. You can see almost that little bit of shine on it. I guess that's on all of them, but this one definitely feels very smooth. The Hero Arts, I guess the Hero Arts is probably more similar to these. And here, I just want to show you the deepness here of the Hero Arts right off the bat is kind of standing out. I know that's one of the things that I really liked about MFT, was that it seemed darker than the ones I compared it to in the last video. But this is even darker still. So if I kind of rank these in order of darkness, well, I guess it's a little hard between these two because this one almost has a little bit of a, I don't know if you can see it, almost a little bit of a red hue to it. I don't know if you ever see black on like clothing, and in certain lighting it can kind of have a different kind of hue to it. So Hero Arts definitely at this initial glance feels the deepest. Trying to feel, let's say these feel pretty similar in weight. This feels maybe, no, I would say these 3 are pretty similar in the weight. I don't know, I didn't look at the actual numbers of what the weight is. The Hero Arts feels the thickest as well too. So not only is this the darkest so far, but that's the thickest. But again, I haven't decided yet. I just wanted to walk through this while speaking because I wouldn't be able to remember if I was trying to do a voiceover. So we'll move on to the next step. Now here I'm showing you what I'm actually going to be stamping today. I'm flipping through my different storage boxes. These are all simple strips from Tailored Expressions. I'm figuring out which one needs replenishing the most. I'm going to show you these awesome boxes. You get a little tray that pulls out, and these perfectly hold the simple strips. So I will show you more about these as we go on, but I have the fun little labels and everything from Tailored Expressions as well, and I'm just figuring out which one I want to go with. And I do end up going with the man, the myth, the legend, just because it's so great for dude cards, and I feel like I was running low on that. So I am going to use the same stamp for all 4 cards. I want to make sure I do everything exactly the same. I want to make sure it's a fair comparison. And you may wonder here why I'm using white pigment ink instead of clear embossing ink. Now, sometimes I do use clear embossing ink like Versamark. However, when I'm doing white heat embossing on black, I find that using a white pigment ink actually benefits me more. For one, because a pigment ink is going to stay wet plenty long enough. You'll have the same benefit of using like Versamark embossing ink. But the benefit of the white is that if for some reason I don't stamp great, or if some of the powder doesn't go on and stick great, you still have that little bit of white underneath from the white pigment ink. So this is a good tip if you struggle with your white heat embossing on black cardstock. Try using a white pigment ink for your stamping instead of a clear embossing ink, and see if that doesn't help you. So here I'm showing you the first example in real time. I will show you the same process with the other cardstocks just to show you that I did complete the same steps, but I will definitely speed that up so you're not here all day with me. But here you're going to see me make a mess, most likely, because I'm always a train wreck with my heat embossing. I'm always spilling powder all over the place, even though I have that nice big container. But that is multiple jars of Brutus Monroe embossing powder. It's the alabaster color, so that's one of my favorite white ones, though I have started also using Wow, and I really like that white embossing powder as well. But definitely use whatever you have in your stash, but for all 4 of these I will be using the same exact coating, the same number of stamping. You'll see I did stamp twice in the Misty just to make sure that I had good coverage, and I tried to coat it with the embossing powder the same way, and now I'm using my Wow 2-speed embossing gun to heat this up and melt the embossing powder. Now I know some people will kind of have a little box with some tin foil in it, which will really help kind of bounce that heat back. I know some people also heat emboss from, or put the heat on the back side. Sometimes I do that, but again on this one I'm just laying it flat on my desk. Since it's a nice big sheet, it's not really blowing around too much on me, and I'm able to just kind of melt the whole shebang. And you'll see in a moment what those squares are for. I'll walk you through the process and how this system works for the simple strips, but they just are such a great example to use for white heat embossing on black. So I'm just taking a look to make sure it's completely cooked. Now the rest of these I'm going to speed up substantially. So as you can see, I have this really cool brush from Tonic. It helps me kind of brush the excess powder away. I'll link everything that I used in the video description box below if you expand and scroll down. And if you do follow any of my links in their affiliate links, it's no additional cost to you, but it really does help me out a lot. Now, that embossing tool is my favorite. That is from the Rabbit Hole Designs. The reason I really like it is because I don't like touching the powder, like the old school powder bags. I don't know, it's just a sensory thing. I don't like it on my fingers, and I feel like the powder gets all over the place. And then another thing I really like about the Rabbit Hole Designs is that it does not have any smell. I am pretty sensitive to scents and smells and things like that, and it doesn't have any at all. So I really appreciate that, and I love that embossing tool. It really does help me out a lot. So here I'm just going through melting the different cards, or the different cardstocks, to see how they compare. I apologize for my phone going off in the background, but I'm just going to melt this and take a little look. I'm angling it in the light just to make sure that everything is completely melted. You can tell if you've missed a spot, if it's still kind of dull in finish. Here I'm going through again, stamping down twice. The benefit of this is I'm not having to clean the stamp at all. I'm just using the same white pigment ink, so I don't have to clean it in between. So again, I have this sped up, just kind of going through. I think this is the time when I really just dump a ton of it all over my desk. Because, yep, right there, I'm a picture of grace, and that's how I roll. So thankfully that brush came to the rescue, and I was able to just kind of sweep it back into the tub, so that was nice. Here I realized there was a little spot missing, so I was trying to fix it and come back in. I'm sure that's just my inadequate stamping, not really anything to do with the paper. So just use my little pokey tool and trying to fix that up and see if I can get some more embossing to stick there. So I believe we're on the last one, or nearly on the last one. Again, I apologize for showing all of them to you when I did the same thing, but I wanted to make sure whoever's watching this knows that I did everything exactly the same way for every sort of cardstock, so you can have an accurate comparison when all is said and done. Okay, we're on the last one here. Hero Arts. I could just come in through with my embossing powder tool. I realized there was some schmutz on there, so again, I'm just using a pokey tool to just try and scrape that off real quick and get more of a perfect finish on that. So now we're on the last one. And do stick around. I will show you some comparison pictures towards the end of this video, so you can get a better idea of how it all turned out and how they compare to one another. But we're nearly done with this final step, and then I'll be able to show you some comparison footage here. So I'm just gonna probably spill it again because again, I'm struggle bus. Honestly, this is why I don't white heat emboss or heat emboss as much as I should, honestly. I have so many beautiful embossing powders and tools, but I feel like I just make such a colossal mess every single time that it deters me. But I'm always pleased, and I love when the moment strikes to be able to stock up like you saw and have all those sentiments ready to go. Because if you aren't familiar, I'm a batch and Betty, and I like to have a lot of components ready to go in advance so that I can sit there and batch a bunch of cards. Now, when I recently mentioned to some of you guys, probably in my community tab, I mentioned that I was going to be doing this video. And someone mentioned the dilemma of that white residual powder from the embossing tool, and they wanted to really pay attention to how the cardstocks clean up. Now, some person in the comments did mention that they used a very, very, just barely damp, I don't know if it was paper towel or something to wipe it off. But this is just a very soft, kind of cheap microfiber, and it actually came off all 4 cardstocks beautifully without any effort. Now, I will say, you can see a little bit of streak of moisture. I will say I did have some moisture, some steam on my glass mat from the heat embossing, and I did use that that little piece of microfiber to dry off my glass mat. So there was just maybe just the tiniest bit of moisture, but I honestly couldn't even find it. It felt dry, but you can see there had to have been a wet spot somewhere because it put down a streak. But overall, I think even completely dry, it would have worked just as well. And it came off beautifully on all 4 cardstocks. So if you struggle with getting the powder off after the fact, I would suggest a really soft microfiber cloth just to try and buff it off and see if that doesn't take care of it. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then maybe try what that other viewer suggested, which is the barely dampest of damp piece of kitchen towel or something like that, just to try and wipe it off. But honestly, this buffed off beautifully. I didn't feel like any was left on there at all that would affect it whatsoever. So here I'm trying to show you some close-ups, but do stick around. I'll show you some pictures as well, and then I will also show you finally how I cut these sentiment strips and how I store them. So here's a couple photos. I really wanted you to see mainly the difference in color, because there is definitely a difference between them. And then also here I'm just going to show you, you have 2 different little options for dies to cut these out, and you line up the little squares perfectly. Actually, I have 2 different kinds. There's actually other options as well. I think there's some other different tips on the ends of the dies, but basically I'm just going to use mint tape and run this through my die cutting machine. Now, I will tell you, I was shocked at the result of this comparison. In my last video, which I'll try and remember to link it below, MFT was the clear winner, just because of the heftiness of the cardstock and the color and how well it heat embossed. But I gotta say, all 4 of these, none of them sunk into the cardstock like sometimes it can do. None of them left, blatant flecks of white all over. It really, I think, just comes down to your preference on the color. There was a slight variance in hue from cardstock to cardstock, but every single one of them kind of cooked up beautifully. I was genuinely shocked because I expected there to be more of a difference. That one makes me laugh. Best farter ever. Sorry. Childish humor there. I had to show you that one. But ultimately, I was just very surprised. Here you go. I'm closing this up so you can see how it stores. It's so satisfying. But here's the finished photo of all these options. Guys, they're all great. I gotta say, Hero Hues might be my favorite just because of the dark richness and the little bit of weight to it. But honestly, all 4 of these are top notch. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'll link everything below, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.